All right, Chloe, we're going live on Facebook.
Peter B. Collins!
Peter B. Collins, news and comment. It's Friday, February 10th, 2017. And once again, Friday means we're on Facebook Live, streaming video from the secret studio north of San Francisco. And I'm delighted to report that our podcast is downloaded in 70 countries. About a third of our audience is outside the United States. And as usual, my studio dog Chloe and our Studio B are on duty because we know that this is the powerful clickbait that will get more people to check out our video feed when it appears on Facebook over the weekend. So thank you for checking us out. Chloe, say hello to our worldwide audience. Let them know you're here. Thank you very much. And I've got a treat for you. Thank you, sweetheart. And we have news to comment on for you today. Yesterday, I led the News and Comment podcast talking about the change of the guard in Alabama, where Senator Jeff Sessions, who has served for more than 20 years, has been promoted to Washington over the objections of virtually all of the Democrats in the Senate. He was confirmed as the Attorney General, and it was highly ironic optics, because on the day that Sessions was confirmed, Don Siegelman, the former Democratic governor of Alabama, who just spent almost 7 years in federal prison with a break in the middle, he returned to house arrest, and he is struggling, I think, to reintegrate into the culture of Alabama. And why would that be? Well, it's got to be very strange, and I choose that word on purpose, for Don Siegelman to see Jeff Sessions promoted to Attorney General and Luther Strange, who lives up to his last name, being promoted from Attorney General of the state of Alabama to the Sessions Senate seat. He will fill out the rest of the term. And once again, we turn to our intrepid and courageous Alabama-based blogger. He's now living in exile in Missouri. But Roger Schuler at Legal Schnauzer breaks it down for us. And as I pointed out yesterday, Schuler exposed the extramarital affairs of Luther Strange, of also the governor, Bob Bentley, and there are others. These are people who proudly tout their family values and their Christian lifestyles as they pursue a series of extramarital affairs. And these are not secrets, but they act like they are. And Roger Schuler at the Legal Schnauzer blog today is saying that Bentley's appointment of Attorney General Luther Strange to replace Senator Sessions is being portrayed in the press as perhaps the most flagrantly corrupt act in modern Alabama history. And because Roger Schuler has been covering this for so long, well, this really doesn't measure up. He has been trying to drain the swamp of corruption in Alabama for years. But it just keeps on coming. So, Luther Strange was exposed by Roger Schuler in a Legal Schnauzer blog, showing that he had carried on an affair with a woman named Jessica Medeiros Garrison, his one-time campaign manager. And in the language of the Schnauzer blog, quote, "We're hearing reports that Strange also sunk his claws into another young female staffer who, like Garrison, went through a curious divorce just as she was getting comfortable in Lutherland. And he promises to crack that story as soon as he can find adequate sourcing. But he also says that the man who is in line to replace Luther Strange as Attorney General is a fellow named Shattuck. Let's see what his first name here is. Cooper Shattuck. And he is a loyalist of Governor Bentley who reportedly had his own affair with the assistant director of media at the University of Alabama. And Schuler knows about the University of Alabama because he lost his job there for his coverage on his own time of the Don Siegelman case. Now, this is even more sordid than what I just explained to you, because Luther Strange helped put a roadblock, or at least a pause, into the investigation into Governor Bentley. That's right. The man who just appointed him to the U.S. Senate, Governor Bentley, has been battling the aftermath of his own escapades with a staff member, a female married staff member. And this even, some of it made the New York Times today, not the affairs, but the sordid nature that Luther Strange, as Attorney General, just 5 days before the November election in 2016, told the legislature that they should stop proceedings to impeach Governor Bentley because Luther Strange, the Attorney General, was conducting his own investigation. Well, that investigation is either dead in the water or has been shelved permanently. And if this new guy, Cooper Shattuck, is made the Attorney General and is described as a loyalist of Governor Bentley, then Bentley has just sealed his own controversies with this corrupt appointment to the United States Senate. It's shocking, except it comes from Alabama, and we've become accustomed to shocking injustices from the state of Alabama. Meanwhile, President Trump has surprised me and many others because he gave an interview to the Israeli newspaper that is owned by the American casino magnate Sheldon Adelson. This is a newspaper called Israel Hayam, which is distributed free every day in Israel, and it is the mouthpiece of Adelson, and he is a strong supporter of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Zionist prime minister of Israel. So this is amazing because Trump had dinner on Thursday night with Sheldon Adelson. And then the interview in Adelson's paper is published with Trump saying that the illegal settlements that Israel has been constructing, that in the Knesset this week they tried to retroactively legalize some of those illegal settlements. Well, they've also announced over 6,000, plans for 6,000 new housing units on Palestinian land. And this is a big defiance of the international community, the United Nations, and me too. So, with that as background, Trump told this newspaper that the settlements don't help the process and that he did not believe that going forward with these settlements is a good thing for peace. Now, this is he's issued some conflicting statements. And sometimes, as we'll point out later in the podcast, what Trump says is trumped or at least contradicted by some of his key appointees. So the other interesting development here is that Trump said he's walking back his plan that was pandering to AIPAC and the other Jewish lobby in this country. He was planning to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. But he told the Israeli newspaper that he was not, and it's noted that he didn't reaffirm his past pledge, but he said, well, it's not an easy decision, and we will see what happens. Now, Netanyahu comes to Washington next Wednesday for high-level meetings with Trump and his associates, and this is a very interesting act of foreplay, if you will, on the part of the Donald. And it intrigues me, so we're going to have to see where it goes. Now, at the dinner also was Rex Tillerson, the new Secretary of State, and the son-in-law of Mr. Trump, whose name is Jared Kushner. And Kushner has been handed the portfolio of the Middle East and Mexico, and we're not sure what else, in the Trump White House. But an intriguing idea has surfaced, and it is a Netanyahu proposal. But Trump and Kushner are promoting the idea that there could be some sort of a pan-Arab negotiation. Now, on the one hand, I'm intrigued by this because it is a different approach. It could lead to a break in the obvious stalemate that has occurred, but it also could be a terrible idea because if allies of the Palestinians group together, we're talking about Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and they're not strong allies of the Palestinians. They kind of pick and choose when they support them. But it's very possible that they could try to impose or cram down some sort of a deal on the Palestinians that Palestinians would find unacceptable. So I'm open to new approaches, but I'm cautious about how Trump would roll them out. And so this is going to be an interesting set of meetings with Netanyahu next week. And the chaos president has delivered once again. Oh, and there's more chaos coming. Just you wait. Now, today I'm releasing to my subscribers at peterbcollins.com and all of our outlets, including iTunes and TuneIn and Spreaker and Stitcher, a new in-depth interview with Chaz W. Freeman. He's a man I've talked to before, and I have a great deal of respect for him. We don't always agree. Chaz Freeman spent 30 years working in the State Department. He rose to become the ambassador to Saudi Arabia, and yet he's a sharp critic of the Zionist government in Israel. And as you'll hear in this excerpt from our in-depth interview, he has choice criticisms, but they are delivered in the very polite and often passive voice of a diplomat. This is Chaz W. Freeman.
Well, I don't think we should focus on internal Israeli politics, which at this point are essentially almost entirely right-wing, very contemptuous of the United States, as Mr. Netanyahu has made clear. He believes we're easily manipulated. The evidence to date suggests that he's probably right.
That's the diplomatic speak, I mean.
The Trump administration has not gone quite as far as Senator Lindsey Graham in saying it will do whatever Netanyahu wants, but it's not far from that position. So U.S.-Israeli relations are now very much with the U.S. in lockstep with whatever the Israeli prime minister and his coalition, which is very right-wing, want. I think the problem here is that Israel is essentially doing itself in. The better people in Israel are leaving. Some of them come here, which is our gain and their loss. Berlin has now got a very large Israeli colony, people who are sitting it out, as it were. Israel's had whatever it is, 68 years, I guess, or so, to make friends with somebody in its neighborhood. It has no friends. You can't live forever with your eyes open, sleepless with a gun held on all your neighbors, which is Israel's strategy.
And in my wide-ranging interview with Chaz W. Freeman, we talk about how happy he is that he did not join the Obama administration in a top intelligence post back in 2009. He has sharp criticism of Libya and also Syria. And I just find him to be a very frank and candid man who knows what he's talking about. I recommend the in-depth interview. It'll be available here on Friday at peterbcollins.com. Also, I want to mention that in a powerful interview that I released earlier this week, I talked with Trevor Aronson, the journalist who published the book 4 years ago called Terror Factory. And he is now writing for The Intercept, which published a 9-part series about the FBI, based on secret documents that The Intercept obtained a few months ago, including the secret manual for the paid informants, 15,000 or more who are out on the streets, often provoking or creating crimes around people who become tagged as domestic terrorism suspects. And Trevor Aronson issued a warning about the need to provide oversight and rein in the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
And so I think, it's really naive to think that the FBI is the benign law enforcement agency that should not be subject to criticism because it's the agency of good guys. I mean, I think, a lot of work needs to be done in keeping their power in check because, their power is so extraordinary and their power is so intrusive and really their powers have the ability to affect everyday Americans. And I think that's the thing I would hope people take away from this series is that, you might think that you're okay, that you haven't committed crimes, that, you're not doing anything illegal. And so
I got nothing to hide.
If you have nothing to hide, right? If you have nothing to hide, why would the FBI investigate you? And I think a lot of Americans just assume that they can't investigate you, but they can. They have every legal ability to investigate you, even when they have no reason whatsoever to suspect you're involved in criminal activity. And I think that's a really startling thing, and I think that's what I hope more Americans will begin to realize.
That's Trevor Aronson. The in-depth interview is available at peterbcollins.com, and I encourage you to check it out. He offered a lot of interesting information. For example, one paid FBI informant earned more than $4.9 million over a 20-year period. Some of these people pick up $100,000 or more per case, and then they become serial informants to the FBI. It's a very, very concerning erosion of law enforcement activity and our constitutional rights. And speaking of the FBI, agents have been contacting people who have been part of the protest at Standing Rock. The water protectors, 3 of them, report in the last few days that FBI agents have come knocking without warrants, just saying, hey, can we have a little conversation? One woman who was in the hospital said that her blood pressure went up as a result of this unexpected visit from an FBI agent. And this raises alarming questions about the use of anti-terrorism tactics and resources, like the FBI, against First Amendment protesters. And Lauren Regan, a civil rights attorney who has been assisting some of the water protectors, said the idea that the government would attempt to construe this indigenous-led, nonviolent movement into some kind of domestic terrorism investigation is unfathomable to me. And so this is just another area where I believe the FBI is a rogue agency. It is not reined in by the courts or by the Congress, and it basically operates autonomously, often stepping outside the law and the Constitution. Every day I like to pause for a second and thank the people who support my work here at the Peter B. Collins Podcast. Now, if you're watching on Facebook for the first time, my daily podcast is free every day. It's never, no subscription is required. But to help support my work, the in-depth interviews are behind a paywall for the first 14 days after they're released. And that's your incentive to become a subscriber so you can hear them when they're new and fresh and just out of the oven. So come on over to peterbcollins.com and join people like my buddy Carl Howard in Columbus, Ohio, Susan Gavay right here in California, Tim McKay, Jim Garrison. They're all monthly subscribers to this podcast, and I'd like you to join them. Now, I don't want your Social Security money or your rent money, but if you've got extra bucks in your checking account, feel free to take out a subscription. You go to peterbcollins.com, click on the menu button, pull it down, click on Become a Subscriber. It takes you to the sign-up page, and we've got bonus books. In fact, I'm going to add a new bonus book in the next few days for whistleblowers, and the bonus books go to people who take out a new annual subscription and have a mailing address in the continental United States. So the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, based here in San Francisco, did not disappoint. In a unanimous decision announced yesterday, they rebuffed the appeal from the Trump administration of the judgment from Judge Jim Robart in Seattle that the Trump decree, the royal decree, that limited travel and hammered people with visas and green cards and that sort of thing must remain on hold. And I can just imagine the blood pressure rising in the Trump unit. He reached to Twitter and said, "We'll see you in court." Now, we're not sure if that means that they're planning to appeal this particular decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. I think that would be a very risky and bad idea for Trump. But the appeal panel of 3 judges said, for example, that they have the authority to adjudicate these issues. That was challenged by Trump's lawyers. They said that the government has taken the position that the president's decision are unreviewable, and the court flatly rejected that. They also said the government submitted no evidence to rebut the state's argument that the district court's order merely returned the nation temporarily to the position it has occupied for many previous years. And they also challenged the government, saying that they had not justified suspending travel to those 7 nations. The government has pointed to no evidence that any alien from any of the countries named in the order has perpetrated a terrorist attack in the United States. So it also schooled the Trump attorneys, saying, well, look, the fact that a White House counsel modified the executive order is meaningless. He's not the president and is not known to be in the chain of command for any of the executive departments. So this was a scorching ruling, but let's be clear. It was limited to the issue of whether Judge Robart's restraining order continues or not. And it does continue for the foreseeable future. And as I mentioned, the idea of an appeal to the Supreme Court could be very risky. Somebody should play golf with John Roberts, the Chief Justice, or taking him out for a drink and say, hey, if we did this, what do you think would happen? Because I think the Supreme Court would be bound to rule in the same way that the appeals court did. There isn't enough on the record for them to make a decision on the merits of any arguments that might be presented. And so this premature effort by the Trump administration to correct its premature ejaculation, and pardon my language there, but that's what the executive order was. It was not properly vetted. It was not shared with people who would say, hey, I got to fix this. You know, the court's not going to accept that. No, it was rushed out by Steve Bannon and Donald Trump and a few others in the White House. They consulted with a couple of people on Capitol Hill who had to sign non-disclosure agreements. I mean, this is one of the most bizarre episodes in American governance. And Trump was properly brushed back by the court, and I don't think he could get a better outcome from the current 8 members of the Supreme Court. This also, as I've mentioned, is going to complicate his efforts to get Neil Gorsuch confirmed to the court, since Gorsuch has quietly tried to separate himself from Trump's lunatic ravings about politics and courts and so-called judges, etc. One of Trump's appointees, National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, a former general, is in hot water, and he may have to step down. And I've been thinking of running a pool on who will be the first to jump ship from the Trump cabinet. And maybe I waited too long to start the pool. At any rate, Michael Flynn is in hot water because of his pre-inaugural conversations with Russian counterparts, where it appears that not only did he inappropriately start to negotiate about lifting the sanctions, some of which Obama hadn't even imposed yet, but he also apparently lied about it after the fact. So this could be the first fatality of the Trump cabinet. Now, there have been more of these Trump phone calls. He told the prayer breakfast last week that just don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. You know, you don't need to worry. But he called Vladimir Putin, and we're starting to learn a little bit about what they discussed. And part of it is that Trump put Vlad on hold for a minute so that he could shout to Steve Bannon or somebody who was in his presence and say, hey, what the hell is the New START treaty? Because Putin was asking Trump to extend this nuclear treaty, the New START treaty that was negotiated with Obama about 8 years ago. And once Trump got briefed on what it was, he said, well, it's a bad deal. It's unfair to the United States. And he proceeded to criticize it. And the proposal was that it would be extended until 2021. Trump's Secretary of State, the oil baron Rex Tillerson, testified before the Senate that he supports the agreement. And this is another case where Trump is stepping on his top cabinet officers in the positions that they take. Then there's the call with Xi Jinping, the president of China. And it's interesting because in Friday's New York Times, the print edition, there's a story about how Xi Jinping has been playing games and giving the cold shoulder to Donald Trump, refusing to schedule a phone call with him because of what Trump did right after the election. And that was he accepted a congratulatory phone call from the president of Taiwan. It was arranged by former Republican leader Bob Dole, who is now a paid lobbyist for Taiwan and got a paycheck for brokering the phone call with President Tsai and the president-elect at that point, Donald Trump. So after the phone call was actually scheduled, Trump got on the line And he said that he will support the one China policy, which is what was in doubt after the phone call with Taiwan. And this is seen as a loss for Donald Trump, the guy who promised us we were going to win, and win big again. So he backed down in this phone call with Xi Jinping, and a Chinese professor says Trump lost his first fight with Xi and he will be looked at as a paper tiger. And a dean of the school at a Beijing university said, even though Trump has said he will support the one China policy, China cannot fully trust him. Even his own people don't trust him. And here's an American professor, Hugh White, he's an Australian professor. The Chinese will see him as weak, he said. He has reinforced the impression in Beijing that Trump is not serious about managing the U.S.-China relationship. So it's pretty dangerous to just let Trump pick up the phone these days, isn't it? And the way Alec Baldwin sent him up on Saturday Night Live last weekend was priceless. And Trump, the ratings, what does he call himself? The ratings machine? You know, he was tweaking Arnold Schwarzenegger because his ratings on The Apprentice aren't that great. But the ratings for Saturday Night Live, as they skewer Donald Trump, are the highest they have been in decades. Donald Trump said he was going to deport bad dudes, right? Well, the early indications are that asylum seekers and people who are guilty of petty crimes may be the first subjects of Trump's deportation wave. One of the poster people for this is Guadalupe Garcia de Reos, a 35-year-old mother of two. She is an undocumented immigrant who has lived in Phoenix for more than 21 years. And she has reported into her immigration officer every year after she was convicted of falsifying a Social Security number. Now, that has been reclassified as a felony under the Trump administration rules. She's not violent. She's not a threat to anybody. She copped to her crime. She's been reporting in like she was on probation. Yet they singled her out for deportation, and she has been shipped to Mexico, where she has not lived for more than 21 years. And it's because the Trump administration broadened the definition of criminal alien to include people like de Reos. And it had been a minor conviction, but it's now considered a deportable offense. The Trump border wall, new estimates say it would take 3.5 years minimum, $21 billion. Who's going to pay for it? I know what the Trump crowds would say, but I don't think that Mexico will pay for his wall. When he swore in Jeff Sessions the other day, Donald Trump made a big dramatic play out of it. He signed a series of executive orders, mostly toothless, but he declared dramatically that all of the crime in this country, drug crime and gang crime, it's going to end right now, just because he says so. And one of them was to reduce crime and prevent violence against law enforcement officials. The other executive order on combating international criminal cartels largely consisted of stating opposition to such groups. And, you know, he used this to make it seem like he's getting tough and everybody should be quaking in their boots. But today, dozens of law enforcement officials released a report and slammed Trump, urging him to abandon his draconian crackdown on crime and to instead revive efforts to reform the criminal justice system. And this was led by the African-American former police chief of Dallas, David Brown, who came to national prominence after the killing of 5 of his police officers last year. He said, "Decades of experience have convinced us of a sobering reality. Today's crime policies, which too often rely only on jail and prison, are simply ineffective in preserving public safety." So, of course, Trump won't care because they'll publish a report that he doesn't read, and he will ignore it because his emotions and his excessive TV watching indicate to him that he is right and the law enforcement leaders are wrong. In the dead of night, the Senate confirmed Tom Price, a medical doctor, he says, a Republican congressman from Georgia, as Secretary of Health and Human Services. The vote was 52-47. He's got issues with insider trading that were exposed during his confirmation hearings, and they rammed through his confirmation. He will be the point man on dismantling Obamacare for the Trump administration. And finally today, I want to encourage you to go to peterbcollins.com, open up the show file for today's news and comment podcast, and at the very bottom, I have posted a link to an interesting video put together by a guy I don't know, but he's similar to me. He's an independent, progressive journalist. His name is David Pakman, and he analyzes in about a 12-minute video what appear to be the severe reading deficiencies that afflict Donald Trump. And you got to watch this video because they show Trump in a deposition just last year where someone, a lawyer, a female lawyer, is trying to get him to read out loud a portion of a lease agreement that he had signed. And he fumbles around trying to avoid it, trying to get other people to tell him what's in it. And another point he says, well, I can't read it because it's small print and I don't have my glasses. Well, we've never seen Trump with glasses. And when he goes on a podium with one of his rallies, he can read statistics about his poll numbers or primary victories without any trouble. But he appears to have about a fourth grade reading level, and his vocabulary reflects that. And the way he wrestles with a teleprompter when he tries to give a formal speech shows that he has some serious problems. And in the video, you'll hear people who know him say that he admits he doesn't read books, he doesn't read reports. And I find this quite alarming. I hope you'll follow the link to YouTube and watch David Pakman's video. And I thank you for watching my live Facebook feed today if you are online with me or watching this later over the weekend. And I also want to thank my listeners to my podcast network worldwide. You can always send me feedback and comments. My email is peter@peterbcollins.com.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails.